So the bottom line, what I'm trying to say is that what we say matters, and it's not actually the words, it's really the tone behind it. It's your attitude about foods that really impacts um, your health and your relationship with food. And I specialize in pediatrics, so we know that the way parents are talking about food and approaching it really impacts kids, their food behaviors, their eating behaviors, their food preferences, I should say. Parents have tendency of saying like, this is a good food and that's a bad food, or you're having too much food, or that's too little food, or this is too much sugar, sweets, and treats. But parents aren't the only ones. We all engage in food talk all the time. It could just be with your friends saying, oh my gosh, I gained so much weight, or I ate so much over the holidays or Thanksgiving. I feel so disgusting, or hey, did you see, I have this new like keto recipe. There's no carbs. You can eat as much as you want. All of that is food talk. And behind everything you see that I'm saying, there's a lot of like attitude and feeling about it. It isn't just fact or what you think. It's really there's an emotional element to it and a judgment. Um, there's also a lot of food talk about like the quality of food. We hear like about, or organic, GMOs, if it's natural or fresh. That has a lot of attitude and emotion behind it as well. I know a lot of people on the call are in the wellness industry. So the way that we talk about wellness also has a huge impact on people. Whether we're talking about fitness, for instance, do we think of it as like punishment? We need to punish or atone for everything we eat. That's a really different vibe than if you're saying, let's go out and like be active, because it reduces stress and really helps us feel good. And I talk a lot with families about the difference between talking about the difference between movement and exercise. There's such a different vibe when kids say, oh my God, I know I need to work out, or parents say, oh, I wish you would just work out, than saying, let's get outside. Let's go outside and get fresh air. Let's move our body. Let's get some energy. And then, of course, I work in the medical field, so we have um, a lot of attitude behind from medical professionals and dietitians included about how we feel about people in larger bodies, about being overweight or obese, and about controlling your weight. It we're going to talk about it a little more, but there's definitely a lot of emotion and attitude when you go into your doctor. If you're just in a larger body, you'll hear a lot of comments about oh, well, you should move around more. There's a lot of assumptions about your eating habits that really are unfair. And that is also a part of food talk. And then, of course, we talk to ourselves all the time about everything we've eaten and not eaten. We should have eaten this. There's a great quote about you open your refrigerator and you see a bunch of vegetables and you're like, I just wish I could have been the person I wanted to be when I bought all those vegetables. You're constantly talking. Amanda talked about it a lot before, this self-talk that you're doing all the time and you're in your head. And the culture that we live in, a lot of that is also around food, unfortunately, which is a shame because most of us have access. We're lucky enough to have access to great food. So to be talking about it constantly and having all these negative feelings is really a shame. And all these attitudes really dig into something that we call eating competence. It leaves you distrustful, doubtful, guilty, questioning, stressed, ashamed. Not everyone on this call probably can relate to that, because it sounds like a lot of people have really good relationships with food. And perhaps it's just a lot of work I'm in, but a lot of people that I work with, a lot of the families I work with do not have great relationships with food. And so these are the things that I find really impact our relationship with food. And diet culture is something that I personally talk about and write about a lot. Diet culture impacts almost everyone. And diet culture is thought of as being predominantly women and people who want to be on diets to lose weight, but it's much broader, in my opinion, than that. healthism, just prioritizing being healthy over everything else. Everyone just assumes, it comes to the medical community, but we all buy into it. Like your health has to be the most important thing. And if it's not, then there's something wrong with you. That's not necessarily true. Weight stigma, just seeing people and regarding people in larger bodies as being wrong or not right. There's so much of that in our culture at large, and also in the medical community. And then food elitism, sort of giving a hierarchy, like these foods are good and these foods are bad. These are better. And if you eat them, then you're a good person. And if you don't, then you're a bad person. So I just wanted to quickly throw all that out there. And then I really wanted to, hopefully I got through it quickly enough because I know it's not the most interesting name, but I want to just have a conversation with Dina and really hear from everyone else, because I'm wondering where people are at with that and what they think. So before we do that, I was wondering if Dina, you could do those polls so I could kind of hear. We kind of have a small group. I don't know how many people are actually going to talk, but
yeah. We have 32 people on with us right now.
Okay.
I did preload the questions, so they're going to come out all at one time because I couldn't figure out how to get them space by space. And when we're done with this, when we have our next break, I'm also going to poll with the general survey, because we've been checking in with everybody just to get an idea of who's out there, because we're every hour it seems like people are coming and going, just to get an idea. So right now, these are the questions that are coming through for Amelia's session. So if everybody can take about, I don't know, 30 seconds, minute, to answer about, have you ever been on a diet? I'm going to just assume I know the answer and what the results to that is going to be. Do you currently work in the health and wellness industry? Because we want to make sure that we are, talking to the right people here as well. Do you have a daughter or do you work with young children? So this is also, taken into consideration, right, Amelia, like teachers, nieces, aunts, and, whatever your relationship, that you are working with younger people.
Yeah, well, the reason I had that question in is because I specialize in talking with women who have disordered eating backgrounds who are now raising girls, and that could be a tough situation. So I work with women who are struggling with that and trying to really make sure their daughter grows up without any disordered eating or eating disorder. But I wanted to broaden this talk because that was my original topic, but I realized not everyone here is interested at all. So I just thought I'd throw that out there. Seems like a lot of people on the call aren't in that position, so we're going to talk more broadly. We don't need to focus in on that at all. I do work with a population that includes all genders of kids who are transgender even, and all kinds of family situations. So it's everything I'm talking about is applicable to everyone. And even if you're not a provider, work in the wellness industry, just your relationship with yourself is also, important, how you're talking to yourself. Seems like the majority of people that work in the wellness or health industry.
And everybody's been on a diet.
93%, which I'm going to show you a statistic, is very in line with what we see in other statistics that have been published. And very few people here are actually raising a daughter. Okay. Yeah. So I think that can help when I answer questions. Okay. Thank you. Should I share it or just...
Oh, I thought I did. I thought I shared the results, but you can do that if you want to on your end.
Yeah, share. Yeah. I don't know how to.
Yeah, that's good. That's
Thank
good.
you.
Yeah. I forgot what kind of controls we have to each other. So do you want me to ask you some questions, or you still have some more things, or you're opening this up now?
No, I wanted to I don't know. I mean, these are the topics, like really weight stigma, diet culture. I would love if you asked me some questions, and then if other people have questions, I don't want to talk. I'd rather hear from people and then kind of really address what people are thinking about.
Yeah. So I think if it's okay, I'm gonna go in a couple of questions just to elaborate a little bit on, or ask you to elaborate a little bit on some of the words, because I really feel like the last 7 months has been for all of us, or the people that I'm familiar with, we're all learning new terms. Like, we're understanding what anti-racism is, we're understanding weight stigma, we're understanding body positivity and body acceptance and how that might differ. Orthorexia is something that you were talking about too, in the healthism way. So I just feel like this has been the year of the glossary terms. So can you walk us through a little bit of like what that means, what diet culture really means? What are we talking about there in relationship to like Weight Watchers, and tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I actually have something I'm going to read to you, if you don't mind. I'll try to make it fast, but it's something that I wrote about diet culture. So the diet culture is getting more and more attention and conversation, and people assume that it's about eating for weight loss or eating for health. I personally, it does include that. I personally think it's a lot broader. So what I have here, what I want to say is that diet culture isn't just about diets for weight loss or health. Diet culture is actually a system of beliefs about foods and eating that attributes moral virtue to certain types of foods and certain nutrients. And then it also at the same time demonizes others. And we're all doing this all the time. Carbs are bad. And it changes,
Mhm.
it changes from year to year and decade to decade, but sugar's bad, carbs are bad. Um, um,
Fat. Yeah.
Flax is really good. We're all doing this all the time. And it also, diet culture also attributes like a higher status and virtue to bodies who conform to thin ideals. So that's more traditional, what we're thinking of with like diet, what people typically think of with it, but it considers like lean bodies or healthy bodies to somehow to be like better than larger bodies. And so we see this in popular culture all the time. It is changing, which makes me so happy. We see now even the video that Kalima showed different types of bodies, which is great. And we need so much more of that. It also attributes different values to like non-GMO foods, or people who are vegetarian, clean eating. Those things are considered good and high. And if you don't do that, then you can kind of like enter whatever the latest eating trend is. So that's part of diet culture. Diet culture actually oppresses people who do not conform to these norms. So you're sort of out if you're not thinking that this is the way you're supposed to be. Diet culture. So I also have a master's in public health. So I'm thinking always broadly. Diet culture contributes to health disparities and disproportionately impacts women, people in larger bodies, people of non-dominant cultures. So if you eat a certain cultural food and it's not in Instagram every day, you may be impacted by diet culture. It disproportionately impacts people, certain races, people of LGBTQ plus communities, people of lower socioeconomic status who are experience food insecurity. Diet culture can be one or all of these things, which is elitist, classist, misogynistic, and racist. I know that's powerful, but I do believe it, and I do think we need to call it out, especially as dietitians. We need to recognize it. And diet culture is definitely perpetuated by the medical system, which determines your health status, either consciously or unconsciously. It attributes like moral status to people based on BMI. And we see that in endocrinology all the time. And I do a lot of education for medical providers around that, how the words they're using are perpetuating some of these things. So that's a pretty wordy, but I wanted to just say it because I think that people really need to understand what diet culture is, because there's a lot of stuff on social media. I'm against diet culture. I'm an anti-dieter. And yes, it is about weight loss, but it is broader. And I think that everyone is impacted by diet culture, and to live in this country with some regard or the other, you have feelings about foods and what's right and wrong.
Well, so even though, starting this discussion was somewhat based about children, it's about what Amanda was saying too, and you mentioned this before, inner stories. So if you're going to, maybe you don't have kids now, but if you're around kids at some point, I'm talking the general you who's watching this now, and myself as well. Like if I'm hearing things that I remember being, no offense, mom, who's listening in the background, but like we used to be part of the clean plate club as well. We couldn't leave the table until we finished everything. And I'm like, I'm 6 years old. I don't need this much pasta. So those little nuances, I think, are things that are coming into effect as well when you're talking about diet culture, like, what's good, what's bad. And then culturally speaking too, right? Is that something that you wanted to discuss as well, where it's like, that's the American version of what is ideal. But other cultures, they'll be like, girl, you're getting skinny. What's going on? Put some meat on your bones. What's happening? Like they don't want you to be thin. So when you enter into these different communities or these situations, it really messes with your mind, the way people speak about stuff that they shouldn't be speaking about.
Well, I have a rule with kids I work with and families is just you don't comment on other people's bodies. We don't have control over our body the way that, the diet industry would have us believe. And you just don't comment on people's bodies. Even to say, oh, wow, you look so great. You lost weight, or you look so great. You filled out. Like those, you have no idea how someone's going to take that. And you are also sending a message. I mean, I work with kids, so it's very sensitive, but you're sending a message to everyone around you that you think thin bodies are great, or you think, bigger bodies are great. Right. And that really is not helpful to everyone else. We don't have control over our body and our body, the way that, like I said, the medical community and the diet industry really, really presses us to think like if we do what they say, we can change things. Might not want to, and really we don't have actually that much control over it.
I was going to say, you change your tune very quickly when you think as it's just a normal question, or, oh, like, you look great, what are you doing? And you hear the answer back, I've been in an eating disorder treatment center, or I had cancer and I just recovered from chemotherapy treatment. So you change your tune a little bit there, because like you said, immediately we just think thinner is better or healthier. Amelia, I'm just keeping my eye on time here. I think we have a few more minutes. If that's okay with you, I can ask a couple more questions, or if anyone else wants to chime in, because I don't want to hog up the whole time. Yeah, go ahead, Sharon, go ahead. So Sharon put in here, can Amelia speak to the differences between diet culture versus working with a nutritionist and having better, well, because we actually had that, I think, as one of our questions. What about wellness versus weight? I think that speaks along that too.
So if you're working with I don't want to say a good nutritionist, but nutritionist, maybe a progressive nutritionist, they will understand the difference between, eating. So for instance, my approach is always focusing on habits, not, I have a tag phrase that I use in medical, like when I'm educating doctors, like we focus on habits, not habitus. So when I'm working with kids or families, parents, we're focusing on your habits. So it's actually your habits, whether you're walking more, whether you're avoiding those concentrated sweets, like, how much juice you're drinking, for instance, not to demonize that, but, I work in endocrinology, so everyone's worried about their blood sugar. Whether you're walking, whether you're listening to your body, are you tuned into the signals of your body? Are you eating past fullness, or are you eating till you're satisfied? Are you spacing your meals out so that you're actually feeling nourished all day? Or are you skipping meals because you're trying to lose weight, or you're just too busy, you don't think it's important, and then overdoing it later on? So habits actually dictate your health. They dictate your, those, what we know from research, are much more related to your risks of getting diabetes or cancer or heart disease or hypertension. Mental health, you're walking every day, that's boosting your mental health. So it's really, really habits. And that's what I always drill down on. What I'm usually doing is trying to undo the idea, this mentality of what you come into the session with is this diet culture mentality of like, well, I really need to lose weight and then things are going to be right for me. My doctor's going to be happy. I'm going to fit into XYZ. Or sometimes, sometimes the doctor wants you to gain weight. Like I said, some of the kids I work with need to gain weight, but it isn't about the weight. It's what you're doing every day. So always think habits. And I don't know if that answers your question or not. With regard to the wellness, I hope so. And if not, chime in. with regard to, oh, and by the way, most people will be very happy to, if you come to them and say you want to lose weight, they'll be very happy to tell you, oh, I'll help you do that, but we know from research too that weight loss diets do not work. People regain weight. Some statistics, I think, show between 80 and 90% of people who lose weight on a weight loss diet regain it in 1 to 5 years. Also, I had some statistics on the end of my slides, but with regard to young people, I think teenage girls who have been on a diet are 12 times more likely to binge eat. So when you sort of enter into that agreement of like, okay, I'm going to start restricting, there is always usually, to diet or to be healthier, there's always usually a backlash of some sort of like disordered eating. The difference that between wellness and health is that a lot of people will come to me and say, well, I want to do this because I want to be healthier and it's for my health. And that actually is, I think that's a lie. If you're saying that, then you do not understand health, because the true definition of health is total emotional, social, and physical well-being. So if you need to go on a diet to get your physical health or into certain shape, and it's at the expense of your social, your like emotional health, for instance, if you're suffering because you now believe there's something wrong with your body and you need to fix it, then you're damaging your health. Also, some people want to really focus on their social health. So they want to fit into a social norm. And that's at the expense of their physical health, because now they're not nourishing themselves and they're dieting, and they may be even malnourished. I think Colleen was talking about malnourishment because of that. So you really need to think of yourself as a whole, and not hide behind the idea of like, oh, I do need a diet because I need to be healthy, which is not true or balanced. And you want to remember that too when you're talking to your kids.
Thank you, Amelia. I'm not sure if we have too much more time before moving forward. Is there anything else that you wanted to share that we didn't necessarily get to? Or how many minutes do you have on there? I kind of lost track. My alarm went off about 5 minutes ago, and I think that was my 10-minute warning, but I can't remember.
I don't have anything I want to talk about unless anyone else has questions or concerns.
I wanted to maybe just one more question I had too, unless anybody else wants to chime in. For people who have been on the constant diet roller coaster, I think I might have shared this the other day. I don't remember with whom. I worked in an OBGYN office. There was a woman who came in. I think I said this at the planning meeting, 47 years old, who had been like trapped in, literally her mom would trap her in a closet to keep her from eating food and calling her fat and all these things. And here she is, 35 years later or whatever, and still those memories are catching her on, and she has not ever had a good relationship with food. So for people who are chronic dieting, that is also not a healthy thing to do. There are ways that you can establish healthier eating habits that bring you to a more healthy weight, whatever that is that your body decides it's going to be. But to be in a constant state of restriction, would you say that can also, especially, depending on males, females, whatever, that can also cause a lot of hormonal disruption too, as far as the endocrinology discussion happens of that cycling?
I'm not so sure about if your weight is yo-yoing, how much it impacts you hormonally. But binge eating, weight cycling and dieting is linked with disordered eating habits, which can often mean skipping a lot of meals and then overeating, or restricting for days at a time and then realizing it's not sustainable. That will impact your ability to regulate your blood sugar. And it has a host of other very negative consequences that I'm kind of minimizing here. But one thing you did sort of touch on is the idea of, I think you were saying a woman was crying. And my comment back to that was that people cry in my office all the time. And again, it's not about, we do actually call it in the community food therapy, but there is a lot of therapeutic conversations going on, because a lot of the behaviors and things that are going on when we say why, it is the things that are driving what I was saying before about their attitudes and their feelings about food are so powerful, and they hang on from when you're very young. So addressing them, one of the things with attitudes is sort of talking about them and acknowledging them can help diminish them. Not doing that can help to cause them to persist. So sometimes it's not really, I need to go to a nutritionist and find out what I need to eat so I can be healthy, but it might be like, I need to go to the therapist and find out why I can't, I can't get in a good place with my body.
Right. Some
You
things are
know,
triggering me, or I'm
the,
having emotional. Yep.
yeah, the nutrition part's often, and I don't want to put myself out of a job, but it's
Right.
often pretty simple. Like, we know the basics unless you have a very serious illness and, that you have to monitor everything. But basic nutrition for the majority of us are very, are healthy. We have access to food that's full of nutrients. Be it processed or not, and we can nourish ourselves, and it isn't that hard. It's really the things going on in our head that are
Yeah.
kind of messing us up.
Yeah. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
On that note, I'm going to go back on screen here just so I can share with everybody who Amelia is. And so if you want to follow her and see what's going on behind the scenes too, with her website and her Facebook page as well. And then I will also share that. So just for anybody who's been popping on now, we are running behind schedule, but we have the open forum that we're going to eat into